Century Speaks. Local people look back over their lives in the 20th century. Programme 5. Living Together.
My mother sent me for some water for the tea. My foot slipped and down I tumbled. Here comes a collier whistling on me. Collier lads get gold and silver. Factory lads get nought but brass. Who would bother with a three-loom waver when there are plenty of collier lads? My mother said if I wed a collier, it would break her tender heart. I never do what my mother tells me. I'll have a collier for my sweetheart.
And I just started going with Robert then. And we never told a week's old. I says, for goodness sake, don't tell anybody. I says, if father gets to know, balloon will go. I was just short of 24. But he was so strict with us, he gave me 2 black eyes when I was 21. He was so short-tempered. That night, he'd followed me home. And Robert left me at that little iron gate going on the bottoms. And when I got in home, they were all in bed, and I'd never known that from being born. They were always either my father up and my mother. So I went to the bottom of the stairs, and I said, hello. It was 9:45. I said, hello. He said, hello. Where have you been? Just like that. I said, I've been at my cousin Thyra's. And who have you been with? I shut up. I didn't say another word. I knew. He says, I know who you've been with. That peg-leg bee. Because he was lame, you know, with Robert. He was wounded at Dardanelles when he was 16. He said, you've disgraced this family. And in the morning, you pack your traps and you leave this house and never enter it again the longest day you live.
Now, I'd go out on a Saturday night with my friends, either at Pitches in Preston or at Palace Theatre in Preston. And the last thing I'd heard as I was going through that door, right, nothing on, you're back in here for 9:30. Where could you go on a Saturday night at 17-year-old and be back for 9:30? Because we'd either to catch bus or train to Lostercall and then walk from there over to where I lived. Yeah, I did rebel. I wasn't allowed to wear makeup, I wasn't allowed to wear perfume, and I wasn't allowed to have scented soap. I can smell it now, that Lifebuoy carbolic soap. Now, can you imagine what it were doing to me, a girl? I wasn't allowed to have silk stockings. They had to be lisle, them thick stockings. Now, I rebelled as regards 9:30 I had to be in. No, I'd catch bus back from Preston, leave me mates for them to go to second house, and I'd catch bus back. And I would walk determinedly slow back home, up Coot Lane, over Spine Cop to our house at the bottom, right? And I would walk deliberately so that I would not be in, for, yeah, you're looking through, 9:30. Right, now I'd get in, open the door, get in. First thing he'd do would look right on the mantelpiece at the clock. He didn't need to say anything, my dad. He only just had to look, right? That was that. I'd be in, about half an hour. And he'd turn round and he'd say, now then, get yourself off to bed. And I used to look at him as much as I said, get myself off to bed at Saturday night at 10 o'clock. Get yourself off to bed. And then happen next week when you go out, you're able to be in for 9:30. In that time, the Americans had come over, the Yanks. There was no shortage of nylons. And you hadn't to have coupons to get toffee. They didn't call it toffee, it was candy. They were giving it you. You were giving it, right? All because they wanted friendship. But the friendship of those Americans, Phil, was something that we girls had never experienced anything. But there was so much of it, Phil, that we were just took over. Anyway, Uncle Harry, my dad's eldest brother, had come to see my dad. And we had a table under the window in the front room. And they sat at this table talking about work or something. And I heard Uncle Harry say, now then, who's coming here in a taxi? My dad said, I don't know anybody who comes here in a taxi. Oh my goodness gracious me, Phil. When I looked out of that window, that American was stepping out of the taxi. And he'd a box of, well, we call chocolates, a box of candy. Well, I can't tell you how I felt. I can't tell you how I know I was terrified. Oh. And next thing, my dad opened the door. Excuse me, he said, is this where somewhere, in his ordinary twang, Miss Taylor lives? My dad says, aye, it is. And what does thou want? And he said, I brought her these. He said, I don't want to know where thou met her. And get this held back up that garden path or I'll put in that taxi.
The war seemed to alter a lot of things in that respect. It broadened people's minds, and just after the war there were a lot of magazines. Pin-Up was one. It was printed in Padiham, and I've always done a bit of writing, and I was doing some writing one day for one of the magazines. Somebody said, well, why don't you write something for Pin-Up and send some photographs up? So, but anyway, I got this Pin-Up, and lo and behold, it's full of girls' legs and all this, that, and the other, short skirts. And I found they were paying quite a good price for a photograph. And nudes, I used to interview these young women, and they used to say, nobody will ever see me without my clothes until I'm married. 10 minutes later, I was photographing her in the nude. I found a technique. You had to praise them and say what a beautiful body they had, and it's a shame that the general public can't see such a beautifully shaped body with a radiant face and all that, and it even may be a step towards being a film star, which it was in those days quite often. And so I did quite a lot of pin-ups as well.
And I'll tell you, all right, I will tell you. This particular time when he came home on leave, it was, I'm going to say a bit embarrassing. It was very embarrassing. And he always used to smoke senior service cigarettes. And at times they'd get them in, like, packets, you know, like you could open it up. And this, because my dad didn't smoke or anything like that. And he said, I said, they've issued us with these. He said, and look what else they've issued us with. And that's how it came about, and they were French letters. Yeah, I don't know whoever's going to listen to this or whatever. I don't know what they're going to... I said, what are they? What are they for? And he just looked at me, didn't know me, and got hold of me. And he says, do you not know? I said, no. And that was the first time. And then, of course, I suppose my education of sex came from my husband to be. You understand what I mean? Because he could tell And it wasn't as if he'd known a lot before he went in the army, because they were like that at Croston too. Very village people, it was taboo with sex. But he were more advanced in it than what, and it was him that learned me, you know. I can't say it was a happy time, my courtship, because of that. Now, my friends at work, one particular friend, she lived at Hughes Walton Alley, and even listening to them, it was a happy time for them, because their mothers had talked to them, and they were telling me things, and I pretended to know, and I used to think to me, what are they talking about? So, can you understand how girls like me could easily get into trouble? That hadn't the courage or the persistence to say no. Well, that's how they come to be pregnant.
You went with a boy, 2 years was nothing, Kath, was it? You know, you go with him at least that. I mean, you might go with him 6 months before you got to kiss you nowadays, let alone jumping into bed. Oh. So really...
Yeah, you'd bring shame on the family, wouldn't you, if you got in that state?
If you got pregnant, you got married. And I don't remember any single parents. Girls that sort of went to homes to have babies and then the babies were taken off them. I remember talk about that, you know, but no, I don't remember any single parent.
I can only ever remember about 2 single parents in Cone, and everybody knew these 2. I mean, can you imagine that today? No,
not today, Joel. No.
Every other one was a single parent.
Yeah.
But there were 2. Yes, it was quite a topic. You know, you didn't talk about it, Kath, did you? Really, if you think about it, nobody ever really said a lot about it. I mean, I had to get. Dennis was born 9 months from me getting engaged, not married. And dear me, I mean, nowadays they just wouldn't bother to get married, would they?
No.
But of course we weren't getting married anyway, so we got married. And even that was really embarrassed for my parents, you know, a shame for my parents. Which today I don't think they'd be, they wouldn't bat an eyelid today, would they? But you really felt for your parents. I mean, I felt as if I'd really, they were right, and I mean, they worshipped that baby when it came, you know. They were perfectly all right about it.
Well, I was, Jackie was born just 7 months to the day after I were married.
Yes.
But we'd set the wedding date when John came out the army, you see, and he got the wedding dress and everything.
Yes.
And of course, getting married in white because I bought this dress, and one of the neighbours said, well, you could tell she was pregnant. Well, I mean, at 8 weeks...
You carried your flowers in front of you, Kath, like that, didn't you?
Well, at 8 weeks, I mean, that's neither here nor there. But that's how it was then.
The war was a great social leveller because it caused a lot of social problems. You had people getting married quickly before the war, before they were drafted overseas. May spend a night or a weekend with their wife or husband. Then the chap's drafted overseas, may not return for 6 years. He comes back, he's a different fella, she's a different girl. There might have been a 6-year-old child, a 5-year-old child there. You know, might have put her in the family way immediately before he embarked. He comes home, who's this man that wants to sleep with you, Mum? He's a stranger, you see. And there were a lot of problems, and this is where I think that the separations really started. And then divorce became easier. Of course, now it's so easy to get a divorce. It's very sad, really. But I think with the war you got a lot of family upsets. I think some of the women were genuinely hard up and they had to earn a bob or two, so they used the bodies. But they never caused us any problems. We used to get a lot hanging round by the market at night on Howe Street, what is now Howe Walk, where the new shops are. And they used to hang around there in the doorways, and I think some used to take them home, but a lot of them used to just go on the market stalls.
Yeah, they were ladies of the night. You could tell then, good time girls I call them. We didn't know what they were. But at 6 o'clock every night they'd be waiting at the bus queue with the fully fashioned stockings, the fox furs, all done up, usually married women. But they'd be out every night at 6 o'clock. When they given their husbands a tea, they'd all be dressed up in best clothes. There was a shop called Alice Burroughs in Nelson, and they got the clothes there. And off they'd trot. And their hair would be done up, you know, the best perms, everything. Makeup, they'd waft of Evening in Paris and things like all Californian poppy. But I just thought they went dancing or something. And then I discovered they went in pubs. And then, of course, I discovered they went with men. In fact, one lady in particular had a first child in her 40s. And I remember them saying, gossip saying, it isn't Jack's. And although he accepted it, they divorced soon after, and she came to live in our street.
Very little divorce in those days among the working class. Divorce was only for the toffs. It used to cost a lot of money, and of course you couldn't get a divorce easily in those days. You had to prove usually adultery, and you had to prove it. This is why they used to have to employ a detective and private detective, and they went through the charade of booking in a hotel, and although very often the woman was a professional adulterer, no adultery took place. They just had to burst in and find them in the bedroom together, and she was like a professional actress, really. And they would either witness them in the room together, sat on the bed or something. It was all arranged. And those were grounds for divorce. The judge would accept it as adultery, although it wasn't adultery.
Well, I never had any illusions about my father. I mean, he was wine, women and song type of man, a womanizer. My mother was a musician, and she had this wonderful Bechstein grand piano. And she'd come home and it'd gone. He'd sold it. And he used to do all this sort of thing, to even stuff in the home, to give to his family. It wasn't for his own benefit. Because she went totally and completely berserk. She'd gone upstairs and cut all his suits up. You see, there's nothing new, it's happening today. When he came in, they had a real big, terrible row. And he went upstairs to the bedroom, and I remember she had a fur coat, which people had in those days. And he's standing on the stairs, and he is ripping it to pieces. And I'm down under the stairs in a terrible state. I was 5 then. And that was in fact that was the final straw, because we split up then. I knew he didn't want to go, because when he was actually leaving, I mean, my mother had packed his cases. And I can remember him crying on the doorstep because he didn't want to go. And I thought, well, it's me. It's something I've done. That's why he's going. I'm losing the one, because we're always close to him or not my mother.
She used to leave me alone in bed when the German bombers were coming over, you know. That's what I can't forgive her for, really. We were in this... And she, I mean, because I don't remember this, obviously, but she tells this when they tell stories about your childhood, you know. They had a cellar, and she said that when the air raid warning went, I used to leave you asleep in your cot upstairs and go in the cellar, because I didn't want you waking up and crying. Well, when you think about that, that is quite... How could you do that?
Do you not remember any cuddles or anything like that?
No, I don't, no, because I read some book once about, you know, these help yourself things, and it said, think back to the time when you were small and you were held in someone's arms, and there's nothing there. You know, there isn't anything there. You think it must have happened, but there's nothing there. I don't remember anybody ever cuddling me. It forms you, doesn't it? So I don't suppose I've been as affectionate with my own children as I might have been. Certainly a lot more affectionate than they were with me. But, you know, when you think now how things are now, I'm probably not as affectionate as I might have been. But I tried to be close to my children, and remembering how I'd felt, that I never treated them in that distant way, as if I'm your mother and I'm a separate person. You know, I always tried to feel on their level and see things from their point of view, and I always explained why we did this and why, you know, why we mustn't do that instead of issuing orders. And I got very good results. I was very close to both of them, but I don't think that I was over liberal with the cuddling, really. And I probably wasn't aware that I wasn't cuddling as well, so I think I've missed out on that, really.
It was like as if you couldn't give yourself fully to the man that you were going with or whatever, or you couldn't give yourself fully. There was always this niggling. You see, and that had been put there, hadn't it, Phil? It wasn't us. It wasn't us young girls. That was being put there in our minds by our parents, grandparents, whoever. I have a granddaughter now, my first granddaughter. I've 5 great-grandchildren. I've a granddaughter now, and she's pregnant at the time. She's 2 other little children. She'll come to me rather than go to her mum, and talk quite openly. Now, her mum, let's have this right, no detriment at all to my daughter. Her mum is my daughter, my firstborn. So maybe, in my daughter's mind, she has catched sparks from me of how I was brought up. Never once up to my first baby, and I suppose a few months after, never once did my husband, never once did I get undressed in front of him, went into the bathroom. Even sex, again, up to my daughter being born. Oh, it's an awful thing to say, Phil, but I felt ashamed. Now, you talk about wedding nights, don't you? Which, very private, this, which you should look forward to. Your wedding night, something to be, you know. I was frightened to death. Frightened to death. It wasn't a happy time. It wasn't a happy night. It wasn't a happy following a week, 2 weeks. No, a week, because now I'm going to go back off leave 10 days after we were married. It wasn't a happy time. But Phil, why should I have been so afraid? Because of what? Because of what I'd been brought up like, hadn't I?
There was a series on television 2 years ago, maybe now, where many elderly women talked about their early married life and how utterly ignorant they were, and how any sense of the sort of tenderness and care and mutual responsibility and mutual satisfaction that we now openly talk about and that women expect in the marriage relationship were totally missing. So that marriage was absolute hell. I mean, it was, you know, lie back and think of Britain sort of thing. I remember a fellow clergyman, great friend of mine, we were contemporaries at college, saying to me one day that we were, as clergy, so ill-prepared for what we had to face and how we had to help people, that when some woman said, well, halfway through the night I came down and slept on the settee, we didn't know what they were talking about. We were so unprepared for the reality of marital life and sexual life and human problems. I learnt slowly in the course of my ministry that when people came to you with a problem of any kind, it might be presented as some sort of spiritual problem about difficulty in believing in God or not knowing whether to come to church or not, or their prayers not being real, but very often it came down either to money or to sex.
Every time I went out, if I would go out, I would never come home without a man. I didn't go to discos and clubs, but I went and joined societies. That's a very good way of dragging men back, is going to societies. And I went to this writers' group, and they were all very dull there. Anyway, then this performing poet arrived. He'd been a performing poet in Manchester, and he was going to shake up this group. Well, I fancied him like anything. So I disappeared with him the first night that he was there. You see, we went to bed. And he said to me,
You ordered him to perform.
Yes. And he said, they don't seem to like you much in that writers group, do they? And I said, no. I said, I've always wondered why. I said, do you think it's because I'm so beautiful or because I'm so talented? And he said, no, he said, I don't think it's either of those. He said, I think it's because you're a hooer. I can see now that I have a good relationship. I can see what was wrong before, and that all this sex was merely a way of asking somebody to love me.
I tried again. He was the same as a rat. Now this one, just met him, well, to tell you the honest truth, it was in a dating agency. I wrote to a dating agency, Dateline, never again.
How old were you?
66, I think. I was 65, 66, something like that anyway. This rat that I married was 74 when I married him. And as I say...
You married him?
Oh, I married him. Oh, yes, I married him. Oh, don't worry, he had me off the... Yeah. He bought me that was the wedding ring that he bought me. And that was the engagement ring. And he had them both bought before I'd known him a month. They think because I've had 6 children, I'm sexy. He used to go in bath, never got undressed in front of me. Went into the bathroom to get undressed, and when we were married, he came in after we were married, and he came into the bedroom after he'd been in the bathroom, and coming in into shorts, underpants and vest, string vest. I says, where are you going? He says, I'm coming to bed. I said, you're not coming to bed like that. I said, where's your jimmies? Pyjamas, you see. Because, my husband was a big fella. He didn't like pyjamas, but he used to wear them because we'd 4 girls, obviously. So he'd wear the bottoms anyway. And he said, I haven't got any jimmies. I said, you're not coming to bed with me like that. I said, no way.
There's 3 rings, what you do, you get the engagement ring, then the wedding ring, and then after that you get the supper ring.
He drowned me in the bath. I was unconscious in the bath, and that was because I woke him up early in the morning and asked him to see to the baby, because I've been up all night with him. He had a routine of violence. I was late home from Sainsbury's one time, so he cornered me in the kitchen, closed the kitchen door, left the baby in the dining room, and put me onto the floor and beat me up. That's what he used to do. He used to twist me on behind my back, get me on the floor and kick me in the stomach until I didn't say anything or didn't move. It was a routine. You got used to it. It got to a stage where the physical violence didn't affect me. I was numb to it. It's actually the mental torture that you carry with you all the time, and it's so hard to get rid of it.
Never got married thinking we get divorced. I've always had this sense of failure on behalf of the children, that if you'd done things differently, or if it wouldn't have ended up like that. But then you get to the stage where you've got to stop thinking about the ifs and just get on with your life. And the children can still see the father. He doesn't play an enormous role in their lives, and that's nothing to do with me. That's his choice. He lives just down the road now. He's got remarried, but hasn't had any more children. And I think I had something to do with that. No, it's. I was terribly worried the children would all grow up to be very dysfunctional and disturbed, whereas in effect I think they're terribly resilient. And I've compared notes with the headmistress at school, and she said, no, they're all perfectly normal, well balanced, fine, But I do think, even though I was born when I was, and feminism was up and coming, I still think children need a father as well as a mother. And if you can have that, a good chap, that to me is still the ideal.
3 by Linda, that's Zoe, Gareth and Dominic. I've got one with Jennifer, he's called Marcus, And I've got a little lad called Layden. He's with Dawn. And he's going to be just like his dad because he's cheeky. And he's absolutely brilliant. And I love him to bits. You know, but that's me. I'm just a fun-loving guy. And nothing will change me no matter what.
If I thought at that time of being pregnant that Mark and I were going to split up and I'd have had to bring a child up on my own, I wouldn't have gone down that path. No. It's really difficult bringing a child up on your own.
Wherever you go, whatever you do, just the fact that you've got a single parent above you, you look down on. You looked on as a failure by some people, by the older generation, I think. So other people are sympathetic with you when you don't want sympathy. You want credit for a lot of it. You want credit because it's bloody hard. It's really hard. So to get to a stage where, like I'm in now, I've got a house, I've got a garden, I've got some income coming in, I'm managing, and I'm very proud of my little boy. I can take him anywhere. I want credit for that. I don't want them to look at me like, oh, she's a single parent, she's had it all thrown at her, and she gets that free and this free and everything else. That's terrible, is that? That's terrible. Certain people don't talk to you anymore because you're a single parent. I find that. Certain people who I knew through my job don't talk to me because I'm now a single parent and not working. So if that's not snobbery, I don't know what is. I really don't. But it's naivety. It's because they have no idea what it's like. Every single girl growing up now, every single girl growing up now, even if they're in a good career or whatever, could end up in exactly the same position as I'm in, because I never vision myself here, and it can happen to any of us, so nobody should look down on anybody else like that. Nobody should, because it can happen to the best of us.
I think it's sad. I'm wary about this love thing. You know, you think love conquers all, and it doesn't. Conquers nothing at all. It doesn't last all that long. You've got to have a lot more. So I've never pushed her to get married. Even when she told me she was expecting a baby, I said, fine, wait till you've had him, wait till he's a year old, wait till he's 2 years old. Of course, he's long gone now, he's a partner, so I'm relieved she didn't marry him. Although maybe she's not, I don't know. People have different ideas on marriage. Divorce, I think, is very sad. I think maybe we should think longer and harder about getting married, and then there wouldn't be as much divorce. It's inevitable. You know, I'm not an advocate of staying together. You know, if you're not happy, then there's no point, and it doesn't benefit the children. But it just seems an irrelevance. You know, why bother getting married if you're going to get divorced a few years later?
I know when I was at school in the 50s that there was naughty girls. And these girls, if they ended up pregnant, either were forced into a marriage or got sent away and had to lose the child. I like sort of today in the way that people don't have to suffer like they had to, sort of abuse and giving the babies up and things like that, because they can talk to somebody now and it isn't hidden. It was there, but it was hidden, and they can now get help. And so if they don't have to suffer, that means that vicious circle can perhaps be broken for future generations. That's where I hope, anyway.